The narrator.
Aunt Mary Helen, you are the narrator. You are the.
That's what we want you because it gives authenticity.
That's what we want. That's what we want.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to keep it quiet.
Say, who is that old lady with the flavoring?
Then we can dub in some other voice. We're going to need to keep this area free of traffic.
Shelley?
Brother, thank you for that.
Can you pick it up?
She's such a happy child.
Yeah, we want the real deal.
You're the real deal, Aunt Mary
Real
Helen.
deal.
I'm the real deal.
You're the real deal.
You're the real deal.
You're the family patriarch.
You're the
You are.
Patriarch.
You are the patriarch.
Matriarch.
Patriarch's the father
Oh,
for
okay.
the male leader.
Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't look worse for posterity. They're going to say that old lady is ready to
All
die.
right, you
Okay.
gotta get the glasses off so we know it's you. Come on now.
The virus went in my eyes.
Are they
They're
all
all
well,
blocked off.
well, let's see.
She's probably gonna be.
That's not bad. They're probably sitting up. They've probably drained a little bit.
They were fine.
Take them off, Bob.
Come on, Aunt Mary.
They can't be worse than my
Yeah, this is
eyes
for your
were.
great-great-grandchildren are going to see this.
Oh, no.
You should have told her that.
Okay.
All
So
right, now
what
we gotta-
I'm
we
going
all have
to
to
do.
be real quiet.
Huh?
There goes your picker upper. Come here.
Quicker picker upper. Is that what that is?
Go in there.
Oh,
Yeah, no cutting across this camera.
It picks up everything but men.
That's right.
Okay.
Why don't you start with,
All right, I'm going to start with the bodfish now. I'm going to just follow this path. This is, you can't get any better than this.
Yeah,
All right.
read that. Let me hear it again.
All right, Amory, I'd like to, can you talk about Robert Bodfish, the pilgrim in 1635, who had one son, Joseph?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate any more on him, or?
Well, I have a little newspaper clipping from Cape Cod that's got all the people that descended from him.
All the people that came from him? Did he, so he, how did he come from England?
Yeah, and he was the original pilgrim.
He came over from England, and he's we can trace him back all the way to him.
Yeah.
And he had one son named Joseph, right?
Joseph.
Okay.
He had another one named
Shelley.
Benjamin, but Benjamin came over and died.
Benjamin died. Okay. Now Joseph, when Joseph himself, he had 12 children.
Yeah.
It appears, and then he had. Again, here we have. He had one son named Benjamin, who married Lydia Crocker.
Yeah. You know the Betty Crocker people?
Yeah,
That's them.
that's them. We can go all the way back to Betty Crocker.
We're related to Betty Crocker.
Now, Captain Bodfish, is that Robert Bodfish, or who sailed around the Cape of Good Hope in the 1700s? Or which captain is that one?
Well, Captain Bodfish was the one that they called the elegant captain because he was of the high class. See, in England there was a lot of class. You know, there was earls and kings and queens and dukes and sir,
Class
and,
distinction.
yeah, people that wore knights in armor, they were sir.
Okay.
And so he was of the higher class, and he was a swordsman,
Okay.
okay? And he sailed around the coast of Africa,
Cape of Good Hope.
the
Okay.
Cape of Good Hope, because there was no Suez Canal in those days.
And he went to Singapore.
Yeah, and
Okay.
he stayed at a place called Raffles, which is where all the sea captains stayed in Singapore.
Wow.
Raffles.
And it says here he gave a black jade cross to his daughter.
Yeah, I have the Black Jade Cross with me. I'll show it to you.
We'd like to see it.
Well, when he was at Raffles, he decides he's going to take a walk because he'd been cooped up on the ship and all. So he walks out into Singapore and he's walking along, and this old Chinese runs up to him and he says, held the Black Jade Cross up, and he said, I have this, would you like to buy it? And he said, how much? And it was a terrible price. And he said, oh no, I can't afford that. He says, it bring you good luck. And that's what you have to say to a sea captain, because they need luck.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, well, I'll need a bit of luck getting me around the Cape of Good Hope going back. He'd already got around once, but going back was rough. So he said, it will get you around the Cape of Good Hope. He sold it to him for a big price. Then he takes out a pen, and he says, your wife would like this. And he said, I just got married. And he gets a big smile on his face. He's Chinese. He said, oh, this would make a good wedding present for her. I've got that here too. And he says, okay, I'll buy a boat. So he bought, and then he put them away safely in his breast pocket here.
Mm-hmm.
I put it up here and buttoned it all down, you know, so because they stole stuff from the captains.
Yeah.
Well, he kept it pretty close there. And he walked along Singapore, and he was pretty happy about it all. And he had with him a dagger. I mean, it's wicked looking. Eddie, you got the dagger. Eddie's got the dagger with the notches.
The pirate knife? Uh-huh.
So,
That's the pirate knife.
We love the
so he fought, and then here it says here he fought pirates in the China
And the
Sea.
China Seas. So pretty soon the ship got full, and they carried the ship. I mean, the captain got on the ship, all the sailors got on, and they sailed out into the China Seas with all their cargo and everything, going back to Cape Cod. Well, what happens? But they got attacked by pirates, and the pirates decide. Is that a wood?
Uh-huh.
Oh my Lord!
And the pirates what?
The pirates were winning.
The
They
battle?
were winning the battle. And they would all have to walk the plank. Well, the captain did not fight. The captain, if something happened to the captain of the ship, they were marooned. They didn't know how to get back. It was only the captain that could get them back.
Mm-hmm.
That was smart enough, you know, and knew the winds and the tides. They'd have to stay in Singapore until either the next ship came, which might never come in their lifetime, or just stay there and marry a Chinese. But they were all married to people on the Cape.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and he had just gotten married. She was 16 years old.
Oh.
And they rode around the village green, and they had a little honeymoon. And then the ship was ready to sail because the pirates were all drunk, and they threw them on board before they knew what was happening to them. Isn't this fascinating?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I threw them on board, and then they ready to set sail. They get the captain, come on, the ship's ready to sail. And he had just got married, and very reluctantly says goodbye to his little 16-year-old wife, and away he went.
Off to sail around the
For
Cape.
3 years it took.
Until he
3
came
years.
back.
Huh?
Until he came back to
Yeah,
Cape
until
Cod.
he came back to the Cape, it was 3 years.
What was the purpose of the voyage? Was
Oh, well, they brought back spices.
okay,
from
so they were
India.
traders, or
Yeah,
okay.
spices and diamonds and emeralds and Lord knows what all. And they worked for like a big company.
Why don't you show them the black J cross and the pin mark?
Huh?
Get the black J cross and pin out.
Oh, well, wait a minute. Let me get through the
I
story.
want to see.
The video camera's on me. So anyway,
Yeah.
no Rocky.
Oh, Sunday. Come here,
So
boy.
let's see, what happens next? Oh, so they sailed, they got over to Singapore safely and everything. The ship was loading up. Then they set sail into the China Seas and were attacked by pirates. The pirates were winning. And if they won, they all had to walk the plank. And that's the plank, you know what that is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They all die. And then the pirates get to loot
Mm-hmm.
the ship. So they saw the Jolly Roger flying, and they tried to outrun it, but they couldn't, and the pirates boarded the ship with was the worst thing they could do.
Mhm.
And they got on one and they pulled, the pirates fought with daggers. But this elegant sea captain had never in his life fought with a dagger. So, he had fought with swords. They all learned to fight, you know, that way.
Mhm.
But he had never fought with a dagger. But he had a dagger with him. So he sat up there in splendid isolation while the men fought. But the ship was being overwhelmed and they needed more help, and the captain came down and, you know, risking everything.
Mhm.
The ship may never have, the sailors took one horrified look. The captain's here. He had the Black Jade Cross in his hand, and they fought like this with the daggers, one hand behind them. That's where the good luck was supposed to be.
Mhm.
But his hand, and they say he fought like a madman. And you could see by the notches on there.
Mhm.
My grandfather told me about it. And I think this dagger that you got, or whatever it is, this knife, has notches on it.
Mhm.
So my grandfather told me that. But now, I'm not sure that that was what he was fighting with, but my grandfather said it was, and gave me the dagger, or the knife. So he fought them with that knife. And every time he killed one, later on, he remembered him and he killed and he notched that.
Mhm.
Do you have it with you, Eddie?
No.
No. Show it to Tom.
Now, he lived in Nantucket?
No, he was
Is that
the
a
one
different
who
captain?
lived in Falmouth. He lived in Falmouth.
Okay, here's a Hartson Bodfish.
Oh,
He was
that's
a sea
that's
captain.
another sea captain.
He lived in
went up-
Nantucket and
he
he
went
hunted
around.
whales?
He hunted whales and went around what they called the Horn,
Mm-hmm.
which was Argentina.
Oh, okay.
And they came up to Hawaii, where all the sailors had their girlfriends and everything. And the sailors wouldn't go anywhere else. They wouldn't go down in the Arctic.
Mm-hmm.
It's the South Pole.
Yeah.
They were scared to get in there. They wouldn't get in there when they could go sailing around and get their girlfriends back in Hawaii, all wait for them.
Now it says here his foot became frozen in the Arctic and he had to chop it off himself.
Yeah, but you're ahead of the story. This is the elegant Captain Bodfish.
There's two different
There's
Captain Bodfish.
Two different ones,
There's
yeah.
Hartson and who's the other one?
The elegant one is one we're descended from.
Okay. Okay.
We're not descended from Hartson, but Hartson was his brother, I think. But Hartson was one tough cookie. But this one was real kind of la-di-da, shall we say. He
Okay.
went around in different circles.
Okay.
Well, anyway. See, I got all this. Got a book out of the library, told all about it.
Okay. Well, let's go back.
Okay.
So he had to. We had. It says here Robert Bodfish, who was, I guess, was son of Benjamin Bodfish. He fought
Fought
in
in
the
the War
war.
of 1812.
Okay.
And, let me see. Oh, we're back to the elegant captain again.
Yeah.
So anyway, they sailed off and went around, and they got around Africa like a charm, since he had that Black Jade Cross.
Mm-hmm.
And they got around there with no storms, no trouble, and the pirates got scared away because the captain was so ferocious, he was killing them all. And they didn't expect him to come down out of his perch where the captain's place was. Came down, and they say he fought like Captain Ahab with the killer whale. And my grandfather told me all this.
Mhm.
So anyway, he got around the Cape of Good Hope and sailed on up, and he got back to
His wife?
His wife, yeah, who was in Falmouth.
Mm-hmm.
No, 19.
So anyway, he got back to his wife, and this little girl ran out. And she said, hello. And it's a real beautiful little girl. And he said, oh, are you the neighbor's little girl? And she said, Daddy, I'm your little girl. He was gone for 3 years and she was 3 years old. Well, he could have knocked him over with a feather. And he took the black jade cross out and he put it around her neck. And she wore it till the day she died when she was 90 years old.
Oh my
What's
lord.
her name?
The first little girl in the family, the very first little girl, always got the black jade cross.
So she handed it, who did she hand it down to?
She handed it down to her little girl then, or to the first little girl that was born.
So how did it get to you? You got it from your
I was
mother?
the first little girl.
And you got it from your mother?
No.
No,
It was the Bodfish.
Oh, I'm sorry, you got it from your father.
father's side, yeah.
Okay.
And
My
Beatrice?
grandfather gave it to me.
Show it to us.
But via Aunt Beatrice, is that how?
Well,
Did it get
no, it
passed
was
from-
my grandmother and grandfather had it in a vault
Okay,
for safekeeping.
okay.
And then he took the pin, which was jade and gold, and gave it to his wife, so she would have something. But he thought he was gonna give her two things, two
Mhm.
presents. But he gave it to the little girl.
What was the girl's name?
I don't know, all I know is she was 90 years old when she died.
Now who
And
will,
she
who
wore it
will
every
get it?
day.
Will Shelley get it then? Is she the next little girl?
Huh?
Who's the next little girl in the family? Is it Shelley?
Yeah,
Let's keep on going with the story here.
Okay.
Now, one,
Shelley.
you said one of our families had 2 gold nuggets that he made into pins, and he went out west in a covered wagon.
Yeah.
That's on the Bodfish side?
The Bodfish side, uh-huh.
And which,
Johnny's got them,
Johnny's got what?
the 2 gold nuggets. He had them made into pins. And I had them.
Oh, you had
My
it.
grandfather gave them to me. See,
Okay.
I was kind of a favorite of my grandfather.
And this was John Bodfish? Was that your grandfather?
No, John was his brother.
Okay, who?
George, his name was George, after George Washington.
So George Bodfish was
My grandfather.
your grandfather,
And John was his brother.
and John was his brother. Okay. And going back,
Then there's Hartson. Hartson lived in Nantucket. And he was a bachelor.
mhm,
He was the brother to the elegant captain, but Hartson was not elegant. They said he was a rough, tough captain.
mhm.
And what would happen, but he was a preacher. And all day Sunday, he preached to the men on the ship.
Oh my gosh.
And if they didn't get there to the service and listen all day to his preaching, they got beaten.
Mhm.
So, they didn't know whether they wanted to get whipped or stay there all day and listen to him. But he preached all day long.
Oh my gosh.
So, Hartson then, but he always brought the ship back. So the sailors had to decide every Sunday, and he had a calendar, and every Sunday he had it marked off what he was going to preach. And they didn't know whether they wanted to hear all that preaching or whether he was trying to convert them, you know, thou shalt not do this and thou shalt not do that, and they wanted to do everything. So, so anyway, he preached to them every Sunday, but there was one thing that managed to get the sailors on the ship. Guess what it was? He always brought the ship back. No matter what happened. And I'll tell you one thing about the sailors and all. The Portuguese came over and they tried to get the whales because they were great sailors and seamen and all. They decided they were going to get some whales. So they went off on expeditions in the Portuguese floor, and they called it the Nantucket Sleigh Ride. That was the day of what would happen. Now, this was before they had the harpoons that shot out of a gun.
Mm-hmm.
This was when the sailors went out in a little boat like, if you gotta read Moby Dick.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
we're
you saw
familiar with it,
Moby
yeah.
Dick? They went out in a little boat and they threw the harpoon
At the well.
at the whale. When it hit the whale could do one of three things. It could take off like a bat out of Hades
Mm-hmm.
and pull them so far away from the mothership they could never get back. Then they all died. It could take a dive into the water and dive down and drown them all. But if the luck was with them, the whale wore out before he did any of this thing. And sometimes he turned around and smashed the boat, too. Okay. Hartson went up there and they did all that, but Hartson didn't do it. This captain never did that.
He just had
never-
workers do
Yeah,
that.
he never went out in that boat.
So he sailed around the Cape
He
of
sailed
South
around
America.
the Horn,
Okay,
which was South America,
okay.
and up into the Arctic Circle. Well, they all got gangrene. Some had their noses and their ears, and Hartson just took a hatchet and chopped it right off. Their arms, feet, legs, and then he got it, and he chopped his off too. And
And then did these captains, how would your father George, was he a descendant of any of these captains?
yeah, and George was ferocious.
Now, George Bodfish, your grandfather, who was his father?
His father was Benjamin, old
Benjamin.
Benjamin. Mhm.
Okay.
But
Okay,
Benjamin was a farmer. He wasn't a sea captain.
okay. And how do you relate Benjamin back to these two sea captains? Was these brothers of the sea captains, or?
Fathers or?
I don't
The
know.
elegant
I have
captain.
I have no way of knowing who
Okay.
they all were, but all I know is we were descended from the elegant one who fought with a sword.
Now George Bodfish, though, they all pretty much stayed in Massachusetts, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then George Bodfish, he had three
Lewis.
kids, Lewis, Beatrice, and Eddie.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And his wife was named Helen, and I'm named after her.
Okay, you're named after Helen.
Oh.
So,
I'm named after my two grandmothers, Mary and Helen.
okay. And how did Lewis Oscar Bodfish, he grew up in Massachusetts, right?
Right.
On the farm,
Uh-huh.
on the okay.
Yeah, it was a 150-acre farm.
Was it a cranberry farm?
Well, they had cranberries one and sold them to Ocean Spray.
Okay. And what made Lewis Oscar Bodfish come to Baltimore?
To study law.
To study law?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And he left at a young age?
18.
He left at 18?
He was the youngest one to ever pass the bar in Baltimore. He was real smart.
And he left, and Aunt Beatrice and Eddie stayed up in Massachusetts.
Well, no, Aunt Beatrice went to, I don't know, to a college up there. Oh, yeah, they stayed up there. But Uncle Eddie didn't. He went overseas, and he was engaged to Alice, and
Okay.
they moved to Ohio.
Okay.
Alice was from Ohio.
Now, Lewis Oscar Bodfish, how long did, when he studied law, he got out, and when did he meet your mother?
Oh, when did he meet my mother?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he lived in, see, there was another Bodfish that was here in Baltimore. He was the president of Georgetown University, and he came up here and was friends with the Archbishop. And his name was Father Whitney, and that's who Jimmy is named after, James Whitney.
Okay.
His name, and we used to have a big picture of Father Whitney. I don't know what happened.
I
I
remember that big picture.
I
You
have
have
it.
it?
I have it.
You have one? Oh, we didn't show it to Tommy then, and Jindy.
But I never knew who he was.
You didn't?
No.
He's president of Georgetown University.
Hmm.
And so he's boarded while he was here at this, taking some kind of a course in an exclusive neighborhood, but with these real la-di-da people called the Buckinghams.
That sounds like that.
Yeah, and the Buckingham Palace.
Yeah.
So the Buckinghams were very fond of my father,
Mm-hmm.
Louis Oscar. So they were so fond of him that they even gave us presents when we were little.
Oh, okay. So how did Louis Oscar Bodfish meet Agnes Hayes, though? What point?
Well, he was at the Buckinghams,
Mhm.
and he became friendly with, of all people, Wallace Warfield Simpson, who married the King of England. He used to walk up the street, and Wallace Warfield's mother ran a boarding house like the Buckinghams did,
Okay.
but only for elite people.
Okay.
And so he walks up the street and became friendly with Wallace Warfield Simpson. And she kind of liked him. And every evening he walked up, sat on her front steps. And of course he was only 18 and she was young. And they used to talk. And he said she was beautiful and fascinating. And her pictures don't do her justice. He said she could charm the birds out of the trees. And one of those birds was King of England.
Okay.
So,
So how does that relate back to Agnes Hayes?
Oh. well, Wallace Warfield said, why don't you take a car ride around the city? Because my father didn't even know how to get on a streetcar.
Mhm.
And so she helped him, to ride around the city and get familiar with the neighborhood. So my father liked riding the streetcar, and he got on the streetcar quite a bit and would take car rides, to learn where things were in the city, the library and this and that. And what happens? But he's riding along, he looks out the window, and here's a very pretty lady sitting on her front steps. And he falls madly in love with her.
And that's Agnes Hayes?
Agnes Hayes. So one day, he gets off the streetcar and walks up and introduced himself. Oh, no, that's not what happened. Well, he first saw her on the steps.
And I had heard that he went to the movie theater and she was the ticket taker. Okay, all right.
He didn't know her, but he saw her on the front steps. That's it. I'm a little confused here. Too many antibiotics. So, he decides that he really fell for her, but what could he do? He didn't know anybody that she knew.
Mhm.
And my mother was kind of funny about just talking to anybody that she didn't know.
But she worked at the movie theater.
But he worked in the movie theater.
He did.
And,
He did?
uh,
Louis Oscar Bodfish worked at a movie theater?
yeah, he was the manager of the movie theater. But sometimes if something happened to the usher, he would become the usher.
Okay.
So this one night, my mother decides she broke up with her boyfriend and she got mad. And she went to the movies. But he didn't come. He was late coming.
Mm-hmm.
And she was kind of engaged, I think, to somebody named Bassford. She said she was bound to get a fish.
That's a good one.
So she broke up with Bassford because he was late for the date. She got mad at him. She went to the movies. And at the movie, the usher was a big guy who kidded around a lot. He was great for kidding. So he said, Agnes, and he knew my mother from way back when they were little kids. Agnes, I have somebody I'd like you to meet. And my father came forward. He said, this is Louis Oscar Bodfish. And she said to the usher, I'll call him Jim Jones. Jim Jones, you are kidding me. His name isn't Bodfish. And he said, I swear it is. And my father pulls out his card. he was a lawyer by then.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Here's my call." And with that Cape Cod accent,
Yeah.
well, that floored my mother because it said, Louis Oscar Bodfish Esquire. And my mother looked, and the usher whispers to her, "He's already had a couple cases."
What did Esquire mean? What did that mean?
Means you're a lawyer.
So then how long did they date before they got married?
Well, the First World War came along.
So they met before the First World War?
Yeah,
Okay.
all this happened before the First World War. And then my father got drafted, and
Okay.
he was at Camp Meade, and my mother used to go down to see him.
Mm-hmm.
And before he was to go overseas, I have it here, her diamond ring. He gave her a diamond ring, and they became engaged.
Oh, okay.
So they
Yeah.
never went overseas because the flu epidemic struck
Okay.
during World War I.
So he stayed at Fort Meade?
He stayed at Fort Meade, and everybody in his tent died of the flu. His best friend died, and he was the only one left in that haunted tent in the middle of nowhere. So he packs. My father wasn't one to sit there and moan about that. He packs up his tent, and he goes to the field hospital, and he said, "I'm not staying in this damn tent all by myself." So they said they were desperate for doctors, and he always did think he was a doctor. We used to call him when I was little, Dr. Dunn, kills all and cures none.
Was he like helping out in the hospital?
Oh, well, he was doing all kinds of things. He was helping them, cut off the legs of the soldiers that came back. And he was taking care of the ones that were shell-shocked and out of their heads and run all around crazy. And he was doing all kinds of things. I mean, he was actually being a doctor.
So when World War I ended, is that when he went back to Baltimore and changed it went from engagement to an actual marriage?
Then he married.
Okay. Now let me go back a little bit. And Louis Oscar Bodfish, he was a pitcher for the Baltimore Carpathians.
Uh-huh.
Can you give us a little bit of history there? Or did he do that while he was going to school? Or what was the history? Did he first come down and play?
Oh, well, he always loved baseball. That was his first love of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And he played semi-pro. And he
Okay.
played with Babe Ruth.
Okay.
And when he first started to play with Babe Ruth, and Babe Ruth didn't do well, he sat down and cried, my father said. He actually would sit down and cry if he didn't get a home run or something like that.
So, and
he
grandfather was a pitcher?
He was a pitcher.
Okay. And and then that was then he stopped doing that after he finished law school, and went on?
Yeah, went into business
Okay.
for himself.
Did he really strike Babe Ruth out?
Did he strike out Babe Ruth? That's what we heard.
Yes.
That's true. He struck Babe Ruth out.
What'd you say?
Did Louis Oscar Bodfish strike Babe Ruth out at the plate?
No.
No?
No, he didn't do that.
Oh, what? Okay.
That's a
Now,
untruth then, because he always used to say that.
He used to tell us all that when we were little.
Oh, well, you can't, And he knows that.
now,
I believe it.
how long were they?
He did.
How long were they? How long were they married before they started? Before they had you and the mother?
Oh, well, they wanted to have a baby right away,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't. So my mother was married 4 years, and then I came along.
Okay.
And then 5 years later, Aunt Betty came along.
Okay.
And you were born.
And what? So, what was it like growing up young in the house, and what was?
Well, it was a big, beautiful house. And I think my grandmother had, well, when you read about the Larkins,
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. I want to complete the Bodfish
Yeah.
part.
well, she lived in a beautiful plantation in a beautiful home. So she recreated it in her own home
Mm-hmm.
here in Baltimore, when she got to Baltimore.
Okay.
And it was a big, beautiful house with crystal chandeliers and velvet draperies and Persian rugs and
What street
marble
was this?
fireplaces.
What street was that on?
Holland Street.
Holland Street.
It was right up the street from Mencken,
Okay.
H.L. Mencken. And so I grew up there.
Okay.
And let me see. I was the princess. I actually was like a little princess. I was the only child, and all the other people were like my grandmother, my grandfather. My grandmother had, well, we had Lizzie and Joseph and all her relatives who helped out at the house because it was a huge house.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin, I don't know how we all got in there. My cousin, Marguerite, Catherine, and Donald. Then Lizzie didn't live with us. She lived in a little house in back.
So did you have to share a bedroom with?
Huh?
Did you share bedrooms with some of your cousins, or?
No bedrooms with the cousins. I was in the bed with my mother and father.
Oh, okay. So all of you were in this. How long did you stay in this house?
Until I was 3 or 4 years old.
Okay.
And we had a big feather bed that came from Ireland,
What year were you born, Mom?
1925.
1925.
And the little princess used to hop up and down on the bed and say, "Are you going to court, Daddy?" Because when he was all dressed up, he'd come in, and he had a heavy beard, if you remember,
Mhm.
and he always put that powder on to make it look lighter. Well, I could smell the powder, and no, he was all dressed up real good, and I know he was going to court as a little tiny baby. So I would hop up and down, I'd say to my father, "Are you going to court today?" And he'd say, "Yes, wish me luck." And I'd say, "Good luck, Daddy." And then he'd give me a kiss, and he'd say, "I'm going to make a lot of money today." And I'd say, "How much money are you going to make?" And he said, $100. And I'd go, "Oh," it sounded like so much, and fall over in the feather bed.
Now, and then you moved from there to another house.
Well, my mother was expecting my sister,
Mm-hmm.
and the house was crowded.
Yeah.
We had my 3 cousins, we had my grandmother, my grandfather, Aunt Clara, Uncle George, my mother, all in that house,
So when your mother was expecting,
expecting Betty.
mm-hmm, she decided to move out.
She decided it was terrible crowded, and we were all going to move to a little house
Mhm.
somewhere,
It
which
was-
we did.
Where was that located?
Fayette Street,
Fayette
it's the
Street.
last block of Fayette Street.
Okay. So it
After
was,
that, there was just fields and.
so it was you four, in the house?
Yeah, 4 of us.
and
What happened during the Depression or the stock?
What do you say?
what happened during the Great Depression? How did that affect you?
Well, my father was in business for himself with Burgess, his name was. My father was shy, but smart as a whip. And he could, do you know he could speak French?
I never knew that.
No. didn't-
French like a Frenchman.
Okay.
You see, there's things about him you all never knew.
Well, we want
That's
to
why
know
we're
now. We want to know now. Well, that's why we're here, so tell us everything we don't know.
He wanted to become a professor of languages. He could speak Latin and French and
In English.
well, yeah, but there was something else, German, I think he could speak.
So he was.
Yeah, he was smart. He was very smart. So he did all the legal work, the nitty gritty. And Burgess was an orator from down south. And you know those people down south, like Billy Graham and all, they could talk. So between the two of them, they were making a lot of money.
Okay.
And they had an office in the Equitable building downtown. When I was little, the little princess went down, typed on all the typewriters. And I can remember they had a gumball machine. And I always had to have a silver gumball.
So what happened in 1929?
Well, the Depression struck. And
About how old were you?
let's see, Betty was just born and I was 10 years old when the Depression struck.
Okay.
And then the banks closed with everybody's money in it. And my father's money disappeared like everybody else's. People were jumping out of windows, wealthy people. That wasn't a Cape Codder's idea.
Okay.
I mean, Cape Codders did not jump out of windows. They went looking for another job.
So what happened to his law business?
No more law business.
Is that when he went into
The
insurance?
money was gone. Everything was gone. And my father came home, I remember, put his head on the table when the banks closed, and he said, "We're ruined." Picked himself up, went out. You know how jaunty he always was with that hat? No. But when I was little, you know that hat that he always wore, straw hat? When he came home, he'd toss it up in the air, and I had to salute him because it hadn't been real long time since he got. So I had to stand there and salute him. And he'd toss his hat up in the air, and he'd sing the old sea chanties to me. I know them all. Lost in the Cradle of the Deep.
That sounds like a good one. So then he went off and to find other work during the Great Depression?
Yeah, off he went to find another job. Well, he couldn't find one. No, there were no jobs. People were selling apples on the corner. So, but he wasn't about to sell apples. So he worked for a building association. He also did that work for them, you know, when he was a lawyer. And they made him the president. So he decided that he was going to, you know, keep that job and then stay afloat, and then try to find something else too, along with it. But he got into a fight with the head of the building association. He was at one head and they were another, but they were a little over him.
Yeah.
And it was over an old lady, and the building association was going to take her house away. And my father wouldn't let him do it. And he told her ways that she could save her house. And they became infuriated and fired him. Now he had nothing. So he was walking down the street feeling pretty sad. You know, his last hope was gone. And he met a man named Mr. Everest from the Eastern Shore. And he said, "How are you, Louie?" Everybody called him Louie. And he said, "Not too well." He says, "I'm looking for a job and I can't find anything." And Mr. Everett said, "I know of a job. Somebody just died at Baltimore Lake. You go right up there, you tell him I sent you," because he was real friendly with my father during law school. My father used to tutor because he was so smart.
He tutored other students.
Tutor law.
So that's how he got a
That's
job
how he
at
got
the
to know
insurance
Mr.
company.
Everett.
Okay, and then growing up, you and my mother occasionally went up to the Cape on the train to visit Aunt Beatrice, or?
To visit my grandmother and grandfather. Oh, I was 18 months old when I went up there.
But did you go up there like every summer or something? Or?
Not every summer, no.
Okay, just
But,
go ahead.
I was 18 months old the first time I went up. The train scared me.
Now, but then other times, did you go up with my mother when after she was born? And
Well, they were supposed to go up when their honeymoon.
who?
My mother and my father
Oh,
were
okay.
supposed to go up there, but they got trapped in New York by a hurricane that hit the Cape,
Okay.
and they never got to the Cape on their honeymoon.
So they spent it in New York?
Well, sort of. See, my father had planned it. You know how he loves sports. He had planned his honeymoon around
The All-Star
Army
game?
the big Army Navy game that was going on in New York.
Okay.
So
Army
his
Navy
honeymoon
football.
that was the big moment of his honeymoon, was getting married and, going off and going to this big Army Navy game up there. Well, the game got rained out by the hurricane, and my mother had a big, beautiful hat that she bought that cost a fortune for her trousseau. And it had ostrich feathers on it. These huge ostrich feathers. And they'd go out to go to a show or eat or something in a big restaurant, and the ostrich feathers would be hanging down in her face from the rain. And she'd come home and dry them with a light bulb.
Now on the let me go on your mother's side, Agnes Hayes.
Yeah.
I have her parents were James William Hayes and Mary Shannon. He
Right.
married Mary Shannon. Now this story, I believe, is the story of
The Larkins.
the Larkins who
The
can.
Larkins and the Shannons.
The Larkins are the Shannons, and going back here, Lord and Lady Larkin
Lord and Lady Larkin.
lived
In the
lived
castle.
on the Shannon River in Ireland,
In Southern Ireland.
in Southern Ireland, and they had a daughter named Kate or Katie,
One daughter, Kate.
and then how does that? There's a boy named Johnny. How does he related? Was he just
Well,
a boy of one of the cooks there or something?
yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. And then they decided to take him or send him to the United States?
Well, what happened was the potato famine struck,
Yeah.
and they left Ireland then because the people in the castles were being attacked by the serfs.
Mm-hmm.
The people in the castles had money, and the serfs had nothing. They were starving. So they were attacking them and killing them all. And so he took little Johnny. His
Mhm.
mother died, and it tells all about that. The Lord.
I'm reading through as you're
Yeah.
talking, and I'm going to
Uh-huh.
ask some questions. So still keep. So he sailed.
He sailed off with them because his mother died, and the Lord and Lady didn't want the little boy to die of starvation.
Okay,
He
and
had
then
nobody.
he then moved to Richmond, Virginia.
First they went to New York, and
Okay.
Johnny got asthma.
Okay.
So they bought a plantation complete with slaves
Mm-hmm.
in Richmond, or near Richmond.
And it was a tobacco plantation.
Uh-huh, a tobacco plantation. And they sold their tobacco to R.J. Reynolds.
R.J. Okay. And then who had 4 children? Kate, Ann, John, and Mary.
Kate and Johnny married. Kate Larkin and Johnny Shannon grew up together, but they weren't brother and sister.
Oh.
Johnny Shannon was the son of the cook,
Okay.
Neat story.
Okay.
one of the serfs.
And now, were they the parents of Mary Shannon then?
Yeah.
Johnny and Kate were the parents of Mary Shannon.
Well, wait, let me see what's written there.
Here it says. Okay.
Johnny
Hold on a minute.
Shannon.
Wait,
Lord.
No,
Okay.
no.
Kate. Okay. Kate and Johnny lived on the plantation.
yeah,
Okay. Fell in love and married.
yeah.
They had 4 children: Kate, Ann,
Yeah.
John, and Mary.
John and Mary.
So they
yeah.
were Mary's
Little
parents.
Mary. Okay, and then Mary Shannon married James William Hayes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then that's how, and then they had kids, and one of them was Agnes.
Yeah.
Okay, and, okay. Now tell me about the fireplace and money being stored in the fireplace, or?
No,
Okay.
Civil War.
she, being related to the bankers, you know, the Lord and lady had, the Lord had brothers who were big bankers in New York and Richmond.
Mhm.
And Johnny grew up, little Johnny. They had a little Johnny, and he grew up and he became. He went up there to become a big banker too, learn banking. Stan went on the stage. Well, unbeknownst, well, when his mother and father found out, they were horrified.
They are horrified that he went to the
That
stage?
he wasn't where he should be, at the back. He was on the stage singing and dancing and telling jokes.
Yeah, they had wanted him to be a banker, and then here he's off being an entertainer.
Okay.
Like
And
vaudeville, I guess. Like vaudeville, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
now, was there gold stored in a fireplace?
No, it was buried.
It was buried
He
in.
changed all our Confederate money into gold.
This
Now,
was during
this
the Civil War?
Well, a little before the Civil War, when the war was brewing,
Yeah.
she changed all her Confederate money, which was a lot, into gold and buried it.
And this was, who did this? Mary Shannon, or her
Her mother.
her mother?
Her mother.
Okay.
Oh, Kate.
Kate. Okay.
Kate Shannon.
And then did they burn her house down?
No, they didn't burn her house down. Here's what happened. They had a beautiful house, marble fireplaces, chandeliers, Persian rugs, and the Army of the North came in looking for the gold, and they got hold of Kate. They said they were going to kill her and everything. And they wanted to know where she hid that gold. And they thought she hid it in half. And she defied them, and she said she didn't know what they were talking about. They were crazy. But she had the gold, but it was buried in the casing. She wasn't able to tell them that. So they said, because what could she survive on during the war? So anyway, her husband had tottered, he said, oh, tottered off the war. It's all in there.
Okay, yeah.
Tottered off the war because he loved General Lee, and he followed him wherever he went and shoot the horses because he knew how to shoot the horses. But he had asthma.
This is still Dancing Johnny, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he wasn't
No?
Dancing Johnny. This was another. Dancing Johnny was his son. This is the old man.
Okay, the old man.
Yeah. So anyway, well, he once danced, but he wasn't dancing now. He was shooting horses. So, let me see what happened next. Oh, he died. He got asthma from. He could have quit, and the asthma would have gone away. But General Lee needed him, and he stayed till the end of the war, when they retreated to Richmond. And when the war ended, he died of asthma because he never left his post. He was shooting horses because it's the only one who could do it. Because he had watched them when he went around with the Lord.
So what happened when they came in to get the gold then?
Did they
So she had
burn the
hidden
house?
it.
The Northern soldiers came to get the gold. They heard about it. And they came into the house. And Kate defied them. She was another Scarlet O'Hara. She told them they were crazy. She told them that she had no gold, that it was all rumors. And they said, we bet you've hidden it in the house. And they smashed her whole beautiful home to bits. Took their swords and hit the crystal chandeliers. They all collapsed on the floor. They ripped the marble fireplaces out of the walls. They had their muddy boots all over her Persian rugs. They tore down the draperies. When it was finished, they never got the gold. Kate was never told. She would have died first. She was a stubborn old lady.
So they
So
had
what-
money to live on then? They were okay?
Yeah, but she couldn't tell them.
Right.
And they were so frustrated, so mad,
So
that
what
they
happened?
threatened to kill her. But
So what happened to the?
she said, the heck with that.
So after the war ended and after the troops left, did she bring up the gold again? Did she keep the gold?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Now tell about the sisters, the one that went off with the Yankee.
Oh.
Mary
that was
Shannon's
terrible.
sister.
That was terrible.
Um,
Well,
Mary
the
Shannon.
house was a shambles. Everything smashed to bits. And the soldiers were so mad that they didn't burn the house. Because they didn't burn the houses like they did in Atlanta. This was Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't, and General Lee was there, and he would have attacked them if they'd started burning houses near
Mhm.
Richmond, near him. So he had forbidden his troops to do that, but they were doing it to the Southerners, say. The
Mhm.
Northerners were doing it to the Southerners, but General Lee wouldn't let his men do that. So he wasn't about to let them, because he was in Richmond,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't about to let anybody burn anybody's house. But they burned the fields, the tobacco fields. They burned all the food, and the whole earth was scorched.
So,
They
so,
dug up the gold, and the moon, a night when there was no moon, she dressed in black, snuck out, dug the gold up.
where did she go somewhere with it?
No, the soldiers had left by then, the Northern soldiers had left. She hated the uniform, she hated the men, she hated them with a vengeance.
And one of her daughters married?
What was her name? What was her name?
Her name was Kate,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a willful little girl. She always had a mind of her own. So, the Northern soldiers, some of them were still there, decided to have a ball and invite all the pretty girls. And they were all going to be friends and dance together, because the war was over. But it wasn't over for Kate, because she hated them all. But her daughter, Kate, was engaged to a real nice young man in the plantation next door.
So did she break her engagement and married a...
Well, what she did, she went, her mother said, don't go to the ball. None of the other girls were going. And Kate said she was tired of staying home, and she was going to the ball, and she got all dressed up, flounced off. And what, her mother was mad, really mad, going to the Northern soldiers' ball when she hated them so. She beats this black-eyed devil, old Kate called him. Real handsome guy from the north, had black eyes, was Irish, Billy Connolly. Black hair, black eyes, and Kate called him a black-eyed devil. Well, she fell madly in love with him, breaks her engagement to the nice young man, but the plantation next door, which hadn't been touched at all, they were all going over there to live, and runs off with Billy Connolly.
Never to be seen again?
She took her sister with her,
She took Mary Shannon with her?
No, the other one. What was
Ann,
it? Ann.
Ann.
her sister Ann.
So there was three,
Yeah, there was Ann, Johnny, and little Mary, my grandmother's little girl.
okay.
And they went to New York, right?
Yeah, they went to New York, she married Billy Connolly, and he treated her terrible. So she sends down the letter to her mother, I'm gonna come back, I'm sorry I did what I did, and her mother had told her, I never want to see you again, because everything was ruined. They would have had a nice time over there in the other plantation, and of all people to marry, she married the enemy. They all hated them, they called them damn Yankees, and they hated them.
So what happened? Did she take her? She didn't take her back, did she? Her mother.
Her mother said, oh no, I never want to see your face again.
Now, did Mary Shannon, the sister, did she stay in good graces with her mother?
She was a little girl, and her mother loved her dearly. That was my grandmother, and left her the plantation.
Okay. And so Mary Shannon and she married James William Hayes.
James Hayes, yes.
And how many kids did they have together?
They had George,
Clara?
Clara, Ann, and My mother, Agnes.
What about the
Okay.
one who died, the brother that died of the blood?
Is that John?
Was that John?
His name was John. He died.
He died
when he
at
was a
6,
little boy.
he was like 16, wasn't he working and he got
Yeah,
caught?
16.
Wow.
Now, how did your grandmother feel about grandfather, Louis Bodfish, since he was a northerner?
Oh, from the north?
Yeah, when he married Agnes.
Yeah,
Hayes.
he was a northerner.
Did that bother her? Did she dislike Lewis?
She didn't dislike him because he was so nice. But Bob, I
If he'd have been
mean,
cocky, she might have not
Yeah.
liked
mean,
it.
nobody disliked my father. Everybody loved him.
Yeah. So, now let's back up a little bit. That's the Shannon side. Is there much? Do you know much about the Hayes side? The Hayes side of the
No,
house?
that's where you have to get Maureen. She
Okay.
knows the Hayes side. I don't know much about them.
How far back does the Hayes? Do they go back far in terms of coming off across in the Ark of the Dove?
Didn't they have a lot of property on the eastern shore, the Hayes?
Yeah.
And they had the courthouse that burned down with all the records in it, and
Yeah.
and he got his arm. It was his arm that got cut off, or his hand when he was a cabinet maker on the trains, wasn't he?
Yep, the blood.
A cabinet maker.
Cabinet maker.
On the trains.
Oh, yeah. That was my grandfather. Got his hand cut off.
James William Hayes got his hand cut off. Okay. And
But he was a cabinet maker, and he had that flu during the war,
mhm.
and he fainted and fell against the machine and cut his hand right off.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, okay, so that's the Hayes part and the Shannon part. Are there any? Okay.
Tell us about Uncle Eddie. How wasn't he real cranky, Uncle Eddie?
Uncle Eddie,
Yeah. Your grandmother's
he was
brother.
a daredevil.
He was the not Uncle Eddie. No, the one
Uncle
that
George,
Uncle
wasn't
George. He was cranky.
it? Wasn't he the one that got gassed in World War One?
Not Uncle George. Uncle Eddie got gassed.
Okay.
But Uncle George was the cranky one, right?
He never went overseas either.
Okay.
But
Because the flu broke out, and they were all needed at the base hospital.
Okay.
tell us about Timmy the dog. Everybody loved Timmy.
Everybody loved Timmy. Yeah.
He was a perfect dog, right?
He did all kind of things that were human. I mean, we'd say to him, Timmy, say your prayers, and he'd go like this. And
Was that your dog?
Yeah.
Up on the Cape.
I'm on
Oh, on the
Beatrice's
Cape.
dog.
Okay, Aunt
over my
Beatrice's
grandmother,
dog.
grandfather. And then he'd look up, like, is that long enough? And we said, it's not long enough prayer, Timmy, and he'd put his head down again.
That's great.
How about
Story.
How about the 49ers that went out to California and they came back?
Yeah, the 49ers.
Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, he went all the way to California, struck gold.
Now, who was this?
Who was he? Who was he?
Garfield.
Garfield Bodfish?
Was he a bodfish or a Hayes
I think
or
he
a
was, I
Larkin?
think his name was Garfield, I'm not sure. I've got a picture of him all.
But he was a bodfish?
He
Yeah.
was a bodfish. Okay.
And he
out
went
there.
west in a covered wagon and found gold during the gold rush of 1849?
Yeah. And then he didn't like it out there, it was too wild. You know, well, it was. I
The
mean,
Wild Wild West.
it was wild out there.
Yep.
I'll tell you.
So he came back to Cape
And
Cod.
he came all the way back through Death Valley, Indians shooting at him. Well, I think the Indians were astounded. I mean, they didn't shoot at him because he was going the other way.
Right, they were glad. See you later.
How about the 7 brothers that fought at, I'm not sure what the word.
During the Revolutionary War,
Which side of the family is that?
this was the Bodfishes fought. They fought at Bunker Hill. And my Uncle Eddie's name was Edward Bunker Hill Bodfish
Oh, really?
because they fought at Bunker Hill.
And what did they do at Bunker Hill? How did they fight? Did they
Well, they
hide
said
behind
don't
trees?
shoot till they see the whites of their eyes.
Did they hide behind trees and stuff like that?
Now, they had a confrontation with the 7 Bodfish boys, British. You remember,
Go ahead, tell us.
Well, we want you to tell it.
well, they had a confrontation at the end of that lane.
Mm-hmm.
their house was on the hill and the lane was down further.
Mm-hmm.
And they met the British there, and everybody said, hide behind the trees and shoot them. Because the British just marched up in their red uniforms,
Mm-hmm.
and they were
Paraded.
face to face, and shot one another. Well, all crazy things to do, but that's the way they thought. And they said, no, we're not Indians. We're Englishmen. See, they still considered themselves Englishmen. And actually, they considered themselves as traitors in a way.
Mm-hmm.
They were scared because they'd be hung.
Mm-hmm.
And they stood there at the end, and they faced the British toe to toe and shot one another. And the Americans, which were the 7 boys, some of them fell down bleeding, and the English fell down bleeding. And the English got scared and rode away. And the ones that were left, the Bodfish boys picked them both up, got them both up the lane to the house, and laid the English soldiers and their brothers on the kitchen floor. And the ladies of the house brought them all. No, they took the bullets out, took care of them all, both the British and their soldiers. You know, the Bodfish boys.
Do you know the story of Old Indian Napa?
Oh, yeah. There was a spring on the place. It was called Nopper Spring because an old Indian lived down there. This is
on
one.
Cape Cod? This is Cape Cod? Okay.
It was my great-great-great-grandmother and grandfather's house. And they were pretty fierce. So old Nopper was down there, and every spring he went down and he stayed down near the spring and drank the water, and he got to be 90 years old. 90 years old. Besides, that it was too long to stay, you know, all year. He was so old, and he wanted to come to the house and stay with them. And they let him. They let the Nopper come up there. And in the winter, he stayed in the house by the fire. In the summer, he went down to Nopper Spring by the water.
Mm-hmm.
And they got their water from Nopper Spring. So everything was pretty cozy. But the war came,
What war was that?
the revolution. And the old lady decides that something might happen. The king's men might win. And she had the deeds from the king. I've got the deeds, and I can show them to you. Our dread sovereign, they called him. And that was King James.
Mm-hmm.
So King James, they were afraid that he would win. And then she lose the land. Her husband probably get hanged as a traitor.
Yeah.
And they lose the land. What does she do but get old Nopper? And her husband had died, marched him to the courthouse and married him.
Whoa.
Well, the Cape, everybody on the Cape keeled over because you did not marry an Indian.
So that's a way
This
of
is
her,
wild.
her protecting the
The
deeds,
land,
the land.
yeah, the land belonged to Nopper. So she married Nopper and got a grant from Nopper that land was hers and the king had nothing to do with it.
Now this was St. Petrus's land?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was my grandfather's
So
land.
she had the double deed whammy. Two deeds. She got the double deed on that
She
one.
had the king's authorization to the land, but she needed something better. And she married Nopper.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the fact that he was 90 years old didn't matter. She had married an Indian. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody whispered, you know, and she says, I don't care. I've got the land.
Isn't that a good story?
Now, going back to, I guess, growing up with your father and mother, what was my mother like as a child growing up, young and in the early years and as a teenager?
My mother?
No, my mother, Betty.
Oh, Betty.
Your sister.
What was Betty like?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay.
she was like Shirley Temple. If you picture Shirley Temple, you can picture what your mother looked like.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, my mother entered her in a Shirley Temple contest.
You're kidding.
No, she looked exactly like Shirley Temple. And she sounded like Shirley Temple.
That's scary.
Did my mother win?
She got the measles. But if she'd been in the contest, she would have won. She had Shirley Temple curls all over her head, and she looked real cute.
And there's a story when you guys were growing up of grandfather Bodfish hearing the story of the World of Worlds.
Huh?
When
The War of the Worlds?
yeah, did he?
Oh, what a horrible memory. Oh, no. I'll never forget it if I live to be 100. It's horrible.
Well, what happened there?
Well, we were going to watch Charlie McCarthy, which most people watched. Edgar Bergen and Charlie
Yeah.
McCarthy. Betty and I were all set to watch it. And we heard this news broadcast. And you know my father had to listen to the news broadcast. And we were saying, we want to watch Charlie McCarthy. My father said, wait a minute. And then they were talking about this meteorite coming down in New Jersey or Delaware or someplace and landed on the earth. And they said, now we're going to take you to the meteor. But you had to listen to Orson Welles. He was a genius. To really believe it. I mean,
So your grandfather believed it was all real?
Oh, well, we all believed it. Along with 100,000 other people in Baltimore that watched it.
Yeah.
People were jumping out of windows and killing themselves. Churches were full of people. So we're sitting there, and gradually he drew you into this spell. And I'll tell you, it was horrifying. And finally we got to the point where the creatures were coming out of this meteor. The top just came off,
Mm-hmm.
and these horrible creatures were coming out. And they were breathing fire and killing everybody. So what do? My mother had gone to the movies and didn't know anything about it. So my father says, well, at the end, they had Roosevelt on telling everybody to be calm. And then he said, we'll stay with you as long as we can. And then they went, thump, and then they were all dead. And my father says, come on, we're going to get your mama.
The movies?
She would have thought we were going nuts. Because you had to hear it to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So my father believed it. We believed it.
Yeah.
So what happens, I decide that we better get up north because it's somewhere up north. So I needed my winter coat. I was always afraid of being without my winter coat. I was a little kid, but I was always cold. So I ran into the bedroom and I'm looking for my winter coat. And I'm looking and I'm looking. In the meantime, my father's getting a little impatient, but you know how patient he really was. And this will show you. He's getting a little impatient. He says, Mary Helen, come on, what are you doing in that bedroom? And I said, I'm looking for my winter coat. And he says, Mary Helen, those things are breathing fire.
That's a good one.
And, he's real calm. I mean, he didn't get nervous or upset or scream or holler at me. He said, Mary Helen, those things are breathing fire. So I said, well, Daddy, I gotta have my winter coat. It might get cold we may go somewhere where it's cold. And so anyway, he was standing there by the radio. We're all scared to death. And we're going down to the movies and have my mother Paige and tell her this tale of woe that we're all going to die. And meteors are landing, the Martians are going to kill us all. And my mother, I know what she said. You've all lost your mind. My mother was like that. She She would have said, what are you talking about? You all lost your minds. So anyway,
Shut up, Louis, you old fool.
So,
the radio announcer
I've
came
heard her
on
say
told
screaming.
everybody
Yeah, he
that.
was screaming. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just a play. This isn't real. There are no
Okay.
Martians. And we couldn't believe it. There are no Martians.
When did grandfather start carrying bags?
Huh?
When did grandfather start carrying
He
bags?
always carried them
All his life?
all his life. And my mother bought him beautiful briefcases. When he was a lawyer and all. Do you think he carried them? No.
He
He
liked
carried
bags.
everything in a bag.
Okay. Is that? Do you have any other stories before we wrap up?
Show us the
Anything
Jade
else?
Cross.
No, there's nothing else. I've told it all.
Show us the Jade Cross
Yes.
while we wrap
I'll
up
zoom.
here. And anything else you got?
Huh?
Show us the Jade Cross and everything else you got. So we're wrapping it up here.
Okay. Well, I hope I don't look or sound too crazy.
I think it turned out excellent.
You know what? You've missed your calling.
What do you mean I missed my call?
You should be on the TV. All the way in the days of the sailing ships.
There's a picker up.
There goes your clicker picker up again.
Now, let's see here. This is my mother's engagement ring. One of these. One of these is the Black Jade Cross. Oh, this belonged to my Aunt Clara, and that's green jade. It came from Lourdes.
Lords of.
Rich
Would you sit that down on the table?
A rich customer.
And head south into the city.
Lord's.
These are just just my wedding band and ring.
Okay. We'll be there in about 15 minutes.
Here.
15, 20 minutes.
Oh, this is the pin he gave his wife.
Oh, for when he came from the Philippines or
Oh.
Singapore.
Singapore.
This is expensive building.
This is the Black Jade Cross, the famous.
Oh, I didn't see any of it. Oh, is it?
It's coming out. We got on footage. Hold
No,
on.
no. What is the green one? What is that?
That came
Let me
from
get this
Lourdes, a wealthy customer of my grandmother's. Of my Aunt Clara, who
Oh,
worked
right,
at
Aunt
O'Neill.
Clara. Right.
This is the Black Jade Cross. If you will
Wow.
look where the gold is, you'll see
Back
Chinese
up.
writing.
Uncle Tom's doing it. Oh, I love the catch on there. That's so neat at the
See the
top.
Chinese writing on each one of those little.
Oh yeah.
It still looks really good, you know. It's like
There is
it's all
some-
in good
yeah.
shape.
See the
Get it
Chi-
back up
I'm
so
Yeah.
gonna
wide
take
at
a
the
picture of
moment.
my Chinese
Here, so,
friend up the
take
street.
a look and then set it down on the table.
You
Get a
should
close up.
take it to the Antiques Roadshow. You know how they had the roadshow and they tell you what everything's worth? That would be wild. And what was this one right here?
That was the pin that he gave his wife.
Because remember, he came back with two things. He came back with the pin and the Jade Cross. He gave this to the girl and that to his wife. Is that right?
The little girl, that's right.
I just want to
Now,
hold
let
the
me
cross
see.
for a second.
It's pretty.
Is that pretty?
Chinese writing on there. I don't see the Chinese
You
writing.
don't, how can you not see it?
Oh,
on
this is
the
a
actual
true
cross?
ring.
See?
This is a
No.
colonial
Oh,
penny.
watch out. They got it back on.
What's that? Bracelet.
This is a bracelet, solid gold, that my father gave my mother. And
Wow.
when I was a little baby, I used to teeth on it. And all these dents are my little
From
teeth, baby
you?
teeth.
Wow, look at that. Oh, isn't that pretty? Yeah, it's probably real solid gold, so it's
Yeah,
soft.
and it was soft, and my little teeth made those marks.
Wow.
From the little princess.
Yeah, I had sharp teeth, I'll tell you. Yeah, my mother let me teeth on it. I
Wow.
could do anything I wanted because I was a little princess.
Princess, I'll tell you. What was this gold coin? This was the Cougar Ann?
Johnny gave it to me.
Oh,
From South Africa.
Yeah.
Now, I'll show you. What do you think of all this?
Isn't that something?
This?
Oh, look at this ring. We got a ring to look at.
Great.
Hey, Gabby.
This came from the best jeweler in Baltimore, and it was given to my mother by my father before he was supposed to go overseas.
Now, who was the best jeweler in Baltimore?
Huh?
Who was the best jeweler in Baltimore?
What jewelry?
What jewelry
Oh,
store?
Hennigan Bates, I think it was.
So this was her wedding ring, her engagement ring.
They brought it out on a blue velvet pillow, and she could have gotten one 3 times this size, but that she fell in love with it. It's got, what it is, it's a blue-white diamond that only the rich people have.
Mm-hmm.
It's very deep, and it has what they call a lot of baguettes
A lot of cuts in it. Like,
to give it fire.
right, let me see it again. Okay. Yeah, they grade the diamonds, and it's not just the size, it's the
It's not the
quality.
size.
Right.
It's the baguettes, the cut,
Clarity.
and the type of diamond, and this is the blue white.
See it?
That all the wealthy people have.
Wow.
Isn't it pretty? It's got, if you hold it up to the sun and the light, you can see the fire in it. It's got fire
Beautiful, yeah. Well, that was
in it.
very
Let's see if there's
nice.
anything else in here.
You have the deeds with you, Mom?
Huh?
You have the deeds?
Just touch Jennifer's on the
I
right
don't
hand.
know these,
in the
I don't
crabs.
know. I put them here.
It's 7:15.
Oh, okay.
No,
So we do
these
that at
aren't
7.
there.
Just touch her husband.
About 15 minutes of
So
work.
that's all the,
Yeah.
Okay.
this is,
We're looking good then.
this is solid
Do we need to
gold
stop and get
and the
beer?
salt.
I think she's getting it, but there's, if she can't, there's package group at
Okay.
her house.
Hey,
hard on
I got
Sundays.
some heavenly ham.
Heavenly Hand.
Yeah, and nice rye bread. And if you're hungry, we'll have it.
That sounds wonderful. But my friend's having us over for crabs. She's
This has
getting
been a
them right
pretty
now.
jam-packed day.